Here's my lineup where I'm at right now and how I would go about doing things for the Islanders. So I think, been made pretty clear by Patrick Waugh that Matthew Barzal is going to go back to playing center. So your center depth, at least in the top three, you could include, I would assume Cizikas is going back to center, but let's just say top three: Barzal, Horvat, Peugeot. And you could flip flop Barzal and Horvat if you want Horvat to technically be your 1C. Fine. If you want Barzal to be your 1C, also fine. I don't, what the line is called, one or two, I don't really care. But I have with Barzal, Lian Holmstrom. Yes, Simon Holmstrom. So we did a lot of talk on Simon Holmstrom this offseason. And there was, a great comment from one of our patrons on Holmstrom being an underrated shooter. And he just frankly does not shoot the puck nearly enough. That's the conclusion that we drew, because he shot at 20.8%, which you might think that's got to be an outlier, right? Over 20%. Well, in 23-24, his first full year in the league, he shot at 20.8%. And even as a rookie, only 9 points in 50 games, 15.4%. So his career shooting percentage is 19.8%. And he scored 20 goals this past year on only 96 shots. Can that number get to like 150? That would be really nice. So with Barzal's kind of, skating around doing his thing. And, I know Anders Lee isn't, 2016 Anders Lee anymore, going to put in 40 goals, but he was really productive last year. He had 28 goals for the Islanders. And, I think it can work. Lee played with Barzal in the past. They've had success together. And if Holmstrom starts converting more, maybe you're looking at a guy in Holmstrom who could give you, 25 plus goals, not just, inch his way to 25 plus goals and 55 points. And, Anders Lee around the same thing, 28 goals and 55 points. And, that's a solid looking line. We also heard Patrick Waugh say that Jonathan Drouin's going to play with Bo Horvat, which to me just makes the most sense, right? Like it doesn't make sense to me to play him with Matthew Barzal because they're way too similar. It'd be like having, a Josh Bailey on Matthew Barzal's line. They're both pass first forwards, pass first players. And again, like you put him with your scores. I have him with Horvat and Palmieri. Bo Horvat, had a bit of a down year in the goal department this past year, has had, multiple 30 plus goal seasons. He had 28 this past year before 33, year before that, 38. And in 21-22, 31. So can he give you 30? Yes, especially with Jonathan Drouin setting him up. And for Kyle Palmieri, I mean, he was a 30 goal scorer 2 years ago. Now, this year it came down a touch. He was at 24, but, people say, well, he averaged 27 over the last couple of years. Drouin's not going to give you 20, more than likely. And he has injury concerns, so that's something else that we have to keep note of. He's going to be penciled in, but is he going to give you a full 82? I'm not sure. Palmieri also, I know he's done it in back-to-back years, but he's going to be 34 this year. Is he giving you a full 82? So he might see some movement, but if you're trying to draw some stuff up here, Horvat and Palmieri, who are more prototypical shooters that the Islanders have, I think it makes sense to put with Jonathan Drouin. Then I get to the third line, and I have it Shabunov, Peugeot, Duclair, but I've seen people want to put Shabunov up with Barzal. I've seen people want to put Anthony Duclair up with Matthew Barzal. And the reason why I don't want to really do that with either of those guys is I just don't know what they are. For Shabunov, he didn't play, he's never played at the NHL level, has a ton of talent. So if he comes out and is firing right out of the gate, right, and really, really productive, then yeah, swap him with Holmstrom, who's played well with Peugeot on the third line in the past, or swap him with Anders Lee, who could move down in the lineup as he's, in his mid-30s, 35 years old now. And for Duclair, he left the team at the end of the year. One, he didn't play well at all and was injured for a large chunk of the season. But when he came back, he was unfortunately very ineffective I know we'll get into it in the comments, but he got called out by the coach a year ago, and now, like, I know he's going to be back with the team, but what version of Anthony Duclair, are we getting? We don't know. So for me, I have a hard time putting him in the top 6 right now. Maybe it shakes out that way, that they'd rather play him with either Barzal or Horvat, but I have a hard time with that. JG Pajot is obviously going to be your third line center. He's played the wing before. You can move him around. I understand that, but they don't seem ready to want to move off of him yet. And assuming they're going to go the route that they did with Brock Nelson, they traded him at the deadline. And to Lou Lamoriello's credit, he got a lot back for Brock Nelson. You would think Matthew Darche is likely to go down that road. Teams have been interested. There's been a number of teams interested, whether it's, you want to say, Minnesota or Boston. You get to the trade deadline, teams are always looking for additional scoring and depth. And Pajot is a third line center. I know he's over 30 years old now. He's still going to win you a ton of faceoffs. He can give you 40 points from, your third line center spot. You can play good defense, play him on the power play, play him on the penalty kill. He's a good playoff performer. You could get a lot for him. So you want JG Pajot to have a good start to your season for one of two reasons. One, maybe a surprise like in 2018-19, and you're a good team and you make the playoffs. Then great. JG Pajot will probably be a big reason behind that if the Islanders get to that point and overachieve this year. And if the Islanders aren't a very good team, maybe they're hovering around 500 or they're a little below 500 at the trade deadline, and Pajot's, on pace for 20 goals and, 45 points, then you trade him and you probably add a third first round pick in 2026. You already have your own in Colorado's from the Brock Nelson trade. And then you have JG Pajot that you can get, maybe a first or a worse second round pick for at the deadline. I mean, we've seen a lot of guys, get traded for similar value in a first round pick who are not nearly the player that JG Pajot is. And then that gets me to the fourth line. I think Casey Cizikas goes back to centering that line, but I think he starts with Emil Heineman, Maxim Siplikov. Now, in my opinion, I think Heineman and Siplikov have ceilings above fourth line roles. I could see both of them on a third line, to be completely honest with you. But then we get back to our conversation about the logjam of forwards. Maybe maybe there's a world JG Pajot gets traded and Anders Lee gets traded. We could see both Heineman and Siplikov move up in the lineup. Maybe you see Cal Ritchie at that point for the final, 30 games at the end of the year or something like that. And to me, that's probably where this is going to be. Lee, Barzal, Horvat, Drouin, Horvat. Lee, Barzal, Holmstrom, Drouin, Horvat, Palmieri, Shabanov, Pajot, Duclair, Heineman, Cizikas, and Siplikov. Extras, McLean, and Gatcomb. I think they were hoping that Kyle McLean would be a longer-term answer, right? He got a 3-year deal on the fourth line. He was not nearly as good last year as he was the year prior. Gatcomb, we talked about at the beginning of the show, I think is a solid player, but don't know if he has enough to get into the lineup. So that's what I think we're looking at forward-wise. And defense, I think you get Pelech Pulock, who they played together a ton. I don't think they're 2021 Pelech Pulock anymore, but I think that's where they start. Romanov D'Angelo is going to be a pair, and maybe they're technically the top pair. And then I am going to put Matthew Schaefer in the lineup. Matthew Schaefer and Scott Mayfield. Now, there's a big debate going on. I don't think there's much debate. Romanov D'Angelo is pretty much a given. Pelech Pulock, given the circumstances, is also a given. If anyone has a different opinion, like Schaefer's not going to be in the NHL, it's either Boquist or Isaiah George with Mayfield, usually in most projections. There's two real options, I think, for Matthew Schaefer. I don't see him going back to juniors this year. I don't think it makes sense for him to go back to junior. He could either go the college route or the NHL route. And I go back and forth on it. I don't necessarily think it's a horrible thing for him to go to the NCAA. I do not worry, but I think an issue early on in his career like in year one, I'm talking could be size. I think he needs to, he's very young. He's 17. He hasn't turned 18 yet. He has to put on a little bit of size and muscle, but I also think he could benefit from playing right away and getting acclimated, because the Islanders need a number one defenseman sooner rather than later. So if you punt it off on this year, you bring him in next year's his full rookie year. He's probably not going to, play top minutes in year two. Then you're getting to like post draft year three by the time you're ready to play him 23 plus minutes a night. I don't know. And again, I go back and forth on it. If you're, dead set on Schaefer going to college, get bigger, and it's better long term, I don't really have much to argue with on that. I just think if you're looking at Islanders defensemen, even at 17 years old, I think Matthew Schaefer is one of their best six. And if they just want to put their best guys out there, and if they think that Matthew Schaefer is going to develop by playing in the league, then that's the way to go. And then you have goalies. We know who they are. Ilya Sorokin, Dave Rittich / Semyon Varlamov. I'm going to say Rittich for now because I just don't know if Varlamov is healthy. And that's it. So that's my lineup.
If you like that, make sure to subscribe to Up the Turnpike on Patreon for more exclusive New York Islanders content.